What is the address, do you think? Some mediums get up there and they haven't got a clue what the address is neither. And so you don't get an address. And has anyone ever heard an address by a medium where you're totally blown away by it and you think, wow. And it's just so inspirational, so uplifting, so powerful. And for me, it's a very rare thing to find. You need a very good speaker who can have that effect on people. But it can be learned. But it has to be understood how to do it. So what is the address? If you had to define what the address is meant to be, what is it? So the address is a talk that the medium does, and it's a talk that should be about or should relate to the philosophy of spiritualism. That is the address. And of course I've just talked you through the 7 principles, which is the philosophy of spiritualism. And how many addresses do you hear that are a talk about the philosophy or a talk related to the philosophy of spiritualism? Not that many sometimes. So that's what the address is. If we look at a model of the address that I've developed, I think this is typically how people develop when doing their addresses. So most people start here. So most people start at point A. And what point A is that the address has no spiritual content, it has no planning, and it has no structure. So you'll get up there and you're thinking, I don't know what to talk about. I've not planned anything. Whatever's going to come out of my gob is going to be a bit unstructured. You know, so for example, I may say, talk to me about personal responsibility. What do I know about personal responsibility? Well, it's one of the 7 principles. Fact. Each one of us should be responsible for everything in our lives. And what we end up talking about is what we can just bring off the top of our head knowledge, and it doesn't necessarily flow, and it's a bit disjointed. It hasn't got any structure at this point here. And often it has 0 spiritual content. That's because there's little conscious planning gone into it, and little conscious structure. So I always recommend that each person needs to plan their early addresses. Because if you don't plan it, you'll tend to work here. So if then you think about, okay, well let's do some conscious planning of an address. Let's try and think about a theme. Let's think about what I can talk about. And so we're increasing the planning, we're coming up to B. And let's try and build in a bit of spiritual content. And you might even have a little bit of inspiration from spirit at that point. But you might not. And it may hold the interest of the audience. It's often factual or personal experiences. I know I'll talk to them about fear. I'll tell them about all the fears I've got. And I'll tell them that they need to accomplish their fears. But I've forgotten to link it into the 7 principles. I've forgotten to talk about the spiritualist philosophy. I've forgotten to say how spiritualism can help you overcome your fears. I'm just talking about something I know a bit about that I can link into my own experiences, my own knowledge. That sounds quite interesting. And I'll give them an uplifting message of, you've all got to get over your fears and move on. You know, and that's what a lot of mediums do. Get up there and it's like, well, but I forgot, I didn't know how to link in the 7 principles. Why should I? No one ever taught me that bit. So you're kind of over here somewhere. You know, it's planned. It's got a bit of spiritual content in, but you know. And then you might think, okay, I'm going to talk about this subject. I need to make it quite spiritual. I might sit down. I might open myself to the influence from spirit. I may get some interesting thoughts in my mind, some themes, some words. I build all of that in, and I structure it to the nth degree. I plan it all out. I've got a good beginning, a good middle, a good ending. Yeah, a couple of nice quotations in there as well. A nice quotation to kick it off with and something good to end it with. And that's pretty much as far as you can get with planned. You know, you're right up the top here at number C. You've planned it to the highest level possible that you can, and you try to plan in as much spiritual content as you can. And you're going to get up there and you're going to deliver that address pretty much as per your plan. And you're going to do it that way. And that's where most people tend to go from there up to there. And by doing that, you've trained yourself to be able to deliver a structured address, which is great. And you've got quite a bit of spiritual content in, and you may have quite a good bit of inspiration in, but it's planned inspiration into it. And all of this is using our conscious mind. Our conscious mind is in control. We're doing all of this. We know what we're doing. We know what we're trying to deliver, and we're going to do it. All make sense so far? But the key then is we then have to start to let go again. So having learned to plan and learned to control and learned to deliver a good address, we then have to actually step back from the process and loosely structure it. And know that if no thoughts come to our mind from spirit, we can still work at a pretty good level of structured address up here somewhere. But we need to leave a bit of time for spirit to see if they'll draw close and touch our minds with inspiration. And something as well, you can't work with spirit doing an address unless you're trying to link with them, unless you've sent out the thoughts that you want them to blend with you. So a little bit like you can't do mediumship on the platform without shifting your awareness. It's the same with your address. You do have to shift your awareness. And that for me is something I see missing in a lot of addresses. Speakers in philosophy class, we get some wonderful things through, but for some people it doesn't seem to quite happen, and that's the bit that we're missing. We're not shifting our consciousness, shifting our awareness, inviting spirit to step in and give us some information. So we're looking for spirit inspiration to come in. And then and what you have to do then is you're letting go of the control to a certain degree. And sometimes you'll find yourself talking about something and you think, God, what am I talking about? And sometimes you'll stop and you can't start again because it's like the words were coming in, the thoughts were coming in, but they weren't really my thoughts or words. I'm not really sure what the heck I've been talking about for the last few minutes, and I've lost it all and I can't start it again. And the key to that is to repeat where you've just been, just the last few words or the last thought, to go back to it and re-establish your link and let it flow. That's the technique to keep it working. But we forget that. So then we want to come right down here to E. And when you reach E, there's an absolutely fabulous amount of spiritual content, but we're going to be totally unplanned. So what's happened? At that point in time, you've let go, you've relinquished entirely your control, and therefore it's total inspiration from spirit. It's the highest level possible of inspiration, and really the thoughts and words are coming into your mind purely from spirit. You're not controlling where on earth the address is going to go. You're leaving it in their capable hands to effectively speak through you, or to put the information through you. And that's the truest form of inspirational speaking. And ultimately that could actually involve some level of control as well. And it involves absolute trust to do that. Because you're actually saying, okay, I'm not going to plan it, I'm not going to structure it, I'm going to leave it to you guys. But if you try and start working there, what do you think would happen? If that's where you first try and start to work, what do you think would happen? If you said, I'm not going to plan anything for the address, I'm just going to get up there, I'm going to link with spirit, and whatever flows through me, flows through me. Or you might not get anything, yeah, that's quite right. And what have you got to fall back to if you try and start there? If you haven't planned anything, you've got from there to come straight to there. So it's a high win strategy. It's got a high failure content if you try and start there. But if you're up here somewhere, if you've planned it quite well, you could also go over there. So so ideally you should be planning as much of it as you can, or know how to plan things and have a lot of knowledge in your mind for spirit to fall back upon. So if the inspiration is not there, you can still do a pretty good job up here without any problem. But if you try and just do it straight from here, very few people will ever be able to work there unless they've already got a very powerful established link with their own guides and helpers who can inspire them in that way. So that's the model. And so most people tend to work up here and then start to come down the other side. Some mediums very rarely get past this point, and they can't work on an inspirational level with spirit. They have to plan it in. They can sit to get it beforehand and plan it in, but they can't get it on the platform whilst they're working. And very few mediums can work down here in my experience. This is kind of the holy grail of where we're all trying to get. Because what you're actually doing is you're not using your conscious mind. Inspiration is received through the unconscious. So on this side, the unconscious mind dominates, whereas on this side, your conscious mind dominates. You're trying to control things. On this side, you're letting go and letting spirit do what they need to do with you as the channel, as the medium. But normally we have to build ourselves up to that. And that process may take, in some mediums, may take years. In others, it may take months. It all depends upon each person. We're all different.